You were basically on the top of the world, and somebody had a burr under their ass for Charlie Engel. And whatever it was, something went off in their head that they were going to bring you down. Tell us about that because your whole life like crashes down on you. And I guess someone upstairs is teaching you a lesson that you need to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I was just out running errands. I was living in Greensboro, North Carolina at this point in late 2009. And I am just bringing my groceries in into a little condo complex. It's one of those places where the condos are upstairs and there's retail down. And I just noticed movement off to my left. And I've got good peripheral vision. And I look up and I see six armed federal agents
Wow.
coming out of a coffee shop in my building. And they're literally like running, fast walking, towards me. And I don't mind saying, I kind of looked behind me and looked around
Right.
and I'm thinking to myself, like, I feel sorry for whoever they're after. And I was handcuffed and placed in the back of a police car and I was taken to the jail in downtown Greensboro. And I sat there all night, didn't sleep, of course, and not knowing, never being told why I was even there at that point. And the next morning, I was handed a big stack of papers, and it was a federal indictment. To your point a moment ago, a lot of people saw my film, and in Greensboro, North Carolina, I was definitely the proverbial big fish in a little pond, and
Right.
like in the paper and on local news and whatever. And this was the day after, by the way, the second film, Running America, came out in theaters locally in Greensboro the day before. And apparently a single IRS agent went to see both of these films. Let's just say he wasn't impressed by, my philanthropy or my running, and based solely on wondering how a runner could afford to do these things, he opened an investigation into my taxes. That's how this all started.
The New York Times, Sarah wrote about this incredible fraud gets perpetrated on the American people by some real criminals. And a lot of them were never held accountable and they made billions of dollars. They were CEOs of the biggest company. But they're going to get like Charlie Engle in North Carolina. That's going to go to 20, 21 months in prison because you signed some document that you were
Hey,
told to sign. Like,
I'm
explain
a big
how
deal.
that.
I'm a big deal, Charlie. You might not
Yeah,
know it.
but it like, explain, like, what you
Yeah.
were accused of and went to trial for.
Yeah,
Like,
so the investigation started with taxes, but because I went to trial, I was entitled to discovery. So in discovery is a memo that says Charlie Engle pays his taxes. Like being self-employed for 25 years, there was 1 year where they said I might still owe $3,000 or something simple like that. But instead of dropping it, this particular IRS agent sent in an undercover female runner to knock on my door. They did dumpster diving. They used the Patriot Act. Talk about misuse of the way things are supposed to go. They used the Patriot Act, which is supposed to be to like
right.
find terrorists and whatever, to charge me with money laundering also, which was dropped before trial because it was a fake. It just charging me with that allowed them to do all these things.
Charlie, what were the options that the judge had, and what did he ultimately do?
Yeah, the prosecution wanted like almost 5 years of prison time. That's what they were asking for. And the judge did a very unusual thing and did what's called a downward departure. It almost never happens. And he ignored the guideline sentence. Look, the jury found me guilty on a technicality.
Right.
I had jurors actually get in touch with me later to tell me that how badly they did not want to convict me of anything. But by the law, I had signed something, put it in the mail, and there was no avoiding that. So anyway, the judge had to give me some time. That's how he viewed it, and it was 21 months. And they also gave me the prosecution, if you can believe it, and I know you can, the DA in the Eastern District of Virginia, I won't use any names, at the time, actually went on national news and said that I personally was one of the people responsible for the crash of our country, because this loan was in 2005. I don't think I ever said that. The loan itself was in '05. So right in the middle of, like, if you had a pulse, if you didn't have a pulse, you could still get a loan.
And it was 3 years before anything happened. That's what they do. I mean, that's the whole
It is.
prosecution was to get somebody famous, show that they were doing something about it.
Well, they couldn't find anybody, like you said, Anthony Mazzillo, the head of, Countrywide. Okay, he got a huge fine, like 400 million. Well, guess
Right,
what? He made like 10 billion on the thing. So I'm pretty sure it was a pretty good deal for him, like, to
right.
pay a big
So,
fine.
Valentine's Day, you have 2 young
Yeah.
boys, teenagers. You were on the top of the world. Now you're in the federal prison. How do you wrap your mind around that to survive what ended up becoming, I guess, 16 months for good behavior?
Yeah, well, they dropped me off at the front gate of federal prison. I'm literally, like, taking my wallet out of my pocket. I'm taking off any jewelry that I'm giving them everything, and, like,
Right.
we're hugging, and there's a lot of tears, and it's very sad. And I'll tell you, the overarching emotion, though, Charlie, was anger. I'm entering the gates of this prison, and I am pissed off about what's been done to me. I'm way sad, but the anger is, like, just pushing everything else out. And I'm a little scared. But look, man, I did 10 years. First of all, this is a minimum security prison. Like, there's no rule book for this, but, like, I knew that I wasn't going to be in there with, murderers per se, and, whatever. And there was going to be, out of 500 inmates, I knew in advance that there were probably 25 or so, like, white collar, criminals in there. And so that was my posse. But I'm in there, and there's a guy, short little African American guy named Pick and Roll. I'll never forget him. I still have no idea what his real name is, but, like, Pick and Roll is showing me around prison. It's like the worst summer camp ever.
He's like the mayor.
Right, exactly. And he's asking me questions. He's like, "So, Engel, like, what's your bid?" And I don't know any of the language. I don't know anything. I'm like, I don't know what you mean. He's like, "How long will you be here?" And I said, 21 months. And he looks at me, he's like, "Shit, that's not long enough to unpack your bags." And what I understood, though, in that moment, or
Right.
began the education of myself in the inequities in prison, and the reality that I'm talking to a guy who got a 20-year sentence for a small amount of, crack cocaine that I probably had in my pocket, 100 times in my life. But there's a lot of reasons I never got stopped, and we can, suss out exactly what those are. But, like, I recognized real early that this was a chance for me. Anger wasn't going to get me anywhere, and my happiness, it slapped me in the face like a glove. My happiness was still entirely up to me, and who I was going to be in this place was going to be up to me. So a few days into it, I started running around the little, I called it a goat path, out around the rec yard every single day. And that became my thing. And there weren't other runners in that prison. And it's where I got my nickname. There was a guy, after about 2 months of running at 5 o'clock in the morning, every single morning, there's a big line for breakfast. And this guy, he yells out, "Hey, Engel, you don't belong in prison. You belong in a fucking insane asylum." And he yells out, "Running Man." And so all of a sudden everybody becomes aware that, my nickname is now Running Man, and that became the title of my book. And
Wow. What was the effect that you had on others in the prison?
yeah, people made fun of me. Like, I mean, it sounds strange, but I mean, there's a lot of weird cliques in prison. We all see that. A lot of what we see on TV is accurate. And I minded my own business. I learned all the lessons early. You're walking, keep your eyes straight ahead. You don't ever, like, there's a lot of things you just never do in prison. And I learned all those lessons, and I minded my own business, and I'm out there running. And a couple of months into me being there and doing this running every single day, a guy comes up to me, African American, and he's like 150 pounds overweight. And he comes up in the lunch line, and he's like, "Hey, I used to play some basketball in high school. He said, I gained all this weight. You think you can help me lose some weight with running? I'm like, yeah, come on out tomorrow. And slowly but surely, this idea that you and I have discussed before, it's attraction over promotion. It's a bad idea, in case anybody listening decides to go to prison. It's a bad idea to go up to the guy and say, hey, dude, you're really fat. Seems like you should lose some weight. Why don't you come run with me? And so I just went about living my life the best that I could in there. I read books every day. I wrote in my journal. I ran. I minded my own business. And people started coming up to me because they wanted what I had. I was at peace, man. When I accepted the fact that this was going to be the next year and a half of my life, I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I just took it as not a vacation, but I just said, okay, for the next year and a half, I'm going to read over 100 books. I'm going to write in my journal every day. I'm going to work on my own book. I'm going to go to the library and educate myself. There's a lot of great guys in there. It won't
Yeah.
surprise anybody that life circumstances, lead people into making big mistakes. And, you know,
And
I
how
will
many
even
people
say,
did you end up helping?
oh my gosh. I had a running group that was over 50 guys. And
Wow.
so every single day, 7 days a week, I had 50 guys running with me at some point throughout the day. Another terrible idea is I started doing yoga by myself on the softball field a couple days a week. And people really made fun of that. By the time I left there were 25 guys 3 days a week doing yoga with me on the softball field. When I left that place, Charlie, people came and there's not a lot of crying in prison, not good crying, and there were happy people coming to say goodbye to me the day that I took off, and even guards thanking me for what I did for them.
How much
And
weight did that guy lose?
I had one guy lose 200 pounds. That guy lost about 100. So, and
Jeez.
I actually still, I'm not going to get into
Right,
details, but at my local gym here in Durham, North Carolina, this was a West Virginia prison, but
right.
most people were from Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. I actually run into people that I was in
Wow.
prison with at my local gym from time to time.
Wow. And what's the, you hear in some of these prisons they only have like 10 minutes a day to exercise or to, but in this prison, how
Yeah.
long could you be out there running?
When you're in low security, there are 5 count times every day, and I mean, I still know my prison number. It's seared into my head like my first phone number. 5 times a day. I had a job too, so I actually earned some money taking care of the rec room. So I probably made 16 cents an hour. Let that
Uh,
sink in for, whatever. I was lucky. I had money on the outside,
right.
so people could send money in to me, but doesn't matter who you are in the federal system. The most you can get any month is $300. So I don't care if you're a billionaire, nobody's sending in more than $300 a month so you can buy peanut butter and Pop Tarts at the commissary. Last count time was at 10 o'clock. And so you had to be in your room, in your cell, not your room. But by
Right.
then, 5 o'clock in the morning, I could be back out there. And in my book, you know the story a little bit, but Badwater, the race that is in Death Valley every year, I actually ran Badwater while I was in prison one time, and it took place over the course of 2 days. And it was technically against the regulations to run more than 3 miles at any given time. So, but I ran 135 miles in those 2 days, and,
Some of
so
it was
not
running in place, right?
well, and sometimes when we were in lockdown, during all my time there, I would run in place in my cell for 5 hours sometimes, and just big old pool of sweat all around me and on the ground. And people just thought it's not a bad strategy for a middle-aged white guy to be seen as a little crazy. It wasn't really my goal, but it served me well. Most people left me alone. 60 minutes, and like all these TV shows wanted to come in and talk to me, and the prison would use safety and security as an excuse not to allow interviews.
Right. And what was the effect of a very well-known New York Times writer writing a few articles about how, like, unjust this was?
Well, and that happened because of my dad. I'm in there, and this is at the time when, Joe Nocera is writing about the after effects of this
Right.
insane, mortgage meltdown that the entire world experienced. mostly thanks to America. And he said, why isn't anybody in prison? And my dad wrote to him actually and said, I beg to differ. My son's in prison for this, which is just incredible. And once Nocera started looking into it, it was weirdly, gratifying to have someone of his stature and understanding be able to just say in very clear terms, number one, with all the shenanigans going on, there wasn't actually even a crime committed. Like the crimes were way up here. The crimes were
Right.
a whole different thing. And this was nothing more than an excuse. And look, I don't want to talk politics, but like I voted for Obama back then, and it was his attorney general, Eric Holder, who was the one coming after me, like literally coming after me. I'm like, how is this possible?
I worked for Obama, but it's a whole different, it's government. And
Well, everybody needs somebody to blame, and government more than anything, and I don't care which administration is in power, blame is going to land somewhere else, and it's going to land on people.
no, you have several million government employees. They're there for a whole career. Republicans,
Yep.
Democrats come in,
Yep.
but they have their job secured and they know how to use the system. So you survived. You basically wrote your book there and you get out. What happens next?
I've got no money. I got no money. I don't have a place to live. So my friend lets me move back in with him. I owe, by the way, the final insult to injury here is I am ordered to pay Bank of America $262,000 because at the judgment, it's so heinous that it's laughable. There was a point at which Bank of America supposedly was going to assume the debt of Countrywide way back when. That never happened. And so that deal never, yet I was saddled with $262,000 to have to pay back to Bank of America. I'd never even had a loan with Bank of America ever. It's so insane. Like you can't make this stuff up. Anyway, so I now have to get on with my life by going out there into the world. And I've got, by the way, 5 years of what they call supervised release, meaning I have to check in, I have to do urine tests, all the things, like whatever. I've got to do all this stuff. And what I learned, and I think this is maybe in a sense, the greatest lesson ever for me, Charlie, is that as human beings, we think the rest of the world is thinking about us a lot more than they actually are. Like people didn't really, I just went out and started living my life again. I started running races and a few people would ask me questions or whatever. Most people said, welcome back, because generally people in my life and not even not in my life knew that it was unfair. And I could spend or waste my time talking about how unfair life had treated me, or I could just own my own narrative. If you don't own your narrative, somebody else will. So I started speaking on stages all over the country. People wanted to hear what I had to say. And I took the message, I hope, of resilience and of of all the suffering in the world. And I like to make jokes, that. My
Mhm.
biggest joke that I would tell on stage for years was, my biggest problem was, what kind of tattoo do you get for like mortgage fraud? Like a fountain pen or maybe a postage stamp or something like that, like, and relatively speaking, what happened to me didn't even crack the surface of genuine unfairness in the world at any time. There's people suffering all over the place. And I came away from it with a greater respect and understanding of who is in prison, why they're there, all of those things. And I recognize that if I didn't have to be a goody two shoes or change my ways or whatever, I still got to speak my mind.
Right.
And just like as a parent, if you keep showing up and you're consistent and people can count on you, all that stuff, you brought me into R360.
Yeah.
I mean, an amazing,
Yeah.
powerful,
I,
incredible group of
yeah.
people. And
I
never
just,
one time did you
yeah.
consider not bringing me
No,
in.
I love your story, and we're backing you on this next crazy thing, which I hope you don't get killed by pirates in the Red Sea.
Me
But
too.
yeah, but the age of 64, why are you going to go from the lowest part of the earth to the highest, scaling a mountain, and then you're rowing a
Yep.
1,000 miles in like pirate infested waters.
It's a terrible idea, just trust me. But that's the only
Yeah,
kind I ever have, just bad ideas. But no, it's look, the difference is this time for me with this kind of an expedition is I am much more in a frame of mind today of self-discovery, of cultural exploration. I like to say this is more like Anthony Bourdain does adventure travel. Like, I'm not trying to set records or I don't want people to look at me and say, "Oh my god, you're running how far?" I want them to look at me and say, "I see you went through that village and you stopped and you worked with all these kids and you did this and that. Like, what's that about?" And
right.
it's an opportunity for me to see parts of the world I haven't seen before. I'll cross the entire Arabian Desert, then the Indian Ocean, and then cross India and Nepal and go to the top of Everest. I had the idea in prison, and this is it's a super simple thing, but when I was in prison, I had a locker that was about this big, and everything that I owned in that prison had to fit inside that locker. And it reminded me of this idea of how comfort plays such a weird role in all of our lives. We think we need more than we need, and when all of it's taken away, weirdly, life gets a lot simpler, and so again, I'm not suggesting that we all dump all our stuff or whatever, all those. It's not about minimalism, it's about simplicity, and it's about not craving comfort. And so I had the idea, why not put a literal spin on, like, metaphorically, I was pretty low at that point, and I had also been very high points. And I wanted to put a literal spin on it and go from the lowest place. So I went into the library and I got an actual like almanac and I started researching the route. I mean, this expedition goes back to
Wow.
2012. That's how long it's taken me to put this together.
Wow.
And I will do it human powered. It'll take about 4.5 months. It'll start January of 2027, and I'll do a free dive in the Dead Sea and then I'll come back up, I hope. Otherwise, it's like the world's shortest expedition. And I'll come back up and I'll start my journey all the way to Mount Everest.
I know you're inviting crazy people, and maybe
Yeah.
one of those
You're one
places.
of them.
I would
You're one
love
of
that.
them.
Let me ask you, longevity health is like 20% genetics, and you
Yes.
obviously have some unbelievable genetics, but the other 80% is what you do, exercise, nutrition. You have to obviously be at the top of your game in that. What advice have you learned through your life that you would give to listeners about really being in top shape?
I have a couple of things, and in full disclosure too, I am working with a group called Unlimited Life, which you've probably heard of Dave Asprey. I am going to be coached by this amazing team of people, and as you know, it includes doing things like stem cells and doing a lot of blood work. And Mark Kielberger is part of this.
Have you gone to Toronto yet for the test?
Not yet, so I'll be part of the second cohort.
I'm going to go in one of the cohorts.
Yes. Well, maybe you and I'll be doing it together because then they go to Ecuador for some training down there and all that. Here's the philosophy though that I will say, and they
Okay.
they know this about me. Like, I'm not the guy looking for shortcuts to longevity. I don't mind putting in the work,
Right,
right?
right.
And in fact, I don't want something to do something for. I still want to go out and run and bike and be in nature and do all the things that I love to do. But the biggest piece of advice I give people is number one, never do like a diet that your neighbor lost 20 pounds on because you are not your neighbor. If he did a keto diet or the Atkins diet or what, I don't care what it is, get your blood work, find out where you are deficient so that you can figure out how to fix those gaps in your health and wellness. The other big piece of advice that I give myself every single day, use a wearable. I know a lot of people don't like to, but if you don't know the quality of your sleep. I told you earlier that I made a lot of mistakes when I trained for Sahara. The mistake was I overtrained because I was afraid of not being fit enough. I know for Dead Sea to Everest, I'm going to be fit enough and I'll gain fitness as I go. But the place that that can fall apart is if I don't sleep. I'll be 64 when I do that. When I did Sahara, I could get away with 5 hours of sleep every night. That's not gonna work for me on Dead Sea to Everest. I need at least 6 or 7 hours every single night, and it needs to be quality sleep. So, nutrition, hydration, and sleep are my top 3 priorities every single day of my life today.
And what is your nutrition like you personally?
I've been vegan now for about 25 years. And for me, it works. But that's another thing. Don't be vegan because I'm vegan. Get your blood work. It may not be a good fit for you. But, without knowledge, you can't make a decision on the best nutritional plan for yourself.
What is the top protein that works for you?
So I eat tons of tempeh and tofu, and I absolutely eat more legumes and nuts than you can imagine. I mean, I probably get, Charlie, 200 grams of protein every single day,
Wow.
which is way more than any meat eater that I know. And so the fallacy that you can't get high quality protein from anything
Right.
except, animals is wrong.
And what's your typical body fat over the last 5 years?
At my age, I mean, I'm still down under 10%, which is for somebody of my age and whatever. And I eat like crazy. I probably eat 2,500 or 3,000 calories a day at least. But the other big trick is, and this is, I don't do like quote unquote intermittent fasting or those sorts of things, or I kind of do it by accident. I made a pact years ago to try not to eat past 7 o'clock at night ever. So most of the time, as long as I can stick to that,
7 to
whatever I've
7.
eaten. Yeah. So, I mean, so I guess I kind of am intermittent fasting, but it's not a thing. It's just what I've always done. Because when
Yeah.
you eat late, you sleep like shit. First of all, you go to bed with a full belly, you're not going to sleep well. I don't care who you are. You go to bed after 3 cocktails, you think that's going to help you sleep. All it does is disrupt your sleep. Recognize the consequences of that. You do pay a price with your sleep. Look, man, I don't think I'm that special athletically. I will say that what you've got in me is a stubborn streak when it comes to physical undertakings that I think you would relate to, and a lot of your listeners would relate to when it comes to business, for example.
Right.
They have that endurance when it comes to, you're launching a company and you end up working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day for 2 years just to try to get the thing off the ground. That's an endurance event. So many people have this same ability, but they don't choose to do a physical thing. I have to say this one thing. Not enough people do hard things on purpose physically. The beautiful thing about it is you can enter a marathon or a 100 miler or go climb Mount Whitney or do the Grand Canyon or whatever. And I mean, short of dying, there is no real such thing as failure. Like you're
Right. Right.
gonna, whereas when you start a business or you do those things, like there's the added pressure of, oh, this could screw up my whole life if I fail. Although that's probably not true either. But with physical stuff, it's short lived. It's going to end.
Right. And how
So
about today? How many days a week are you running on average?
I train 6 days a week for sure. But I don't plan like a day off. I just listen to when my body says
Got
you
it.
need to take a break. But I run 3 days a week. I'm getting next summer, I will be doing RAM, which is the Race Across America bike race, which is probably the hardest endurance event maybe in the world because you go from LA, from Southern California at the coast to the coast of Maryland, a little over 3,000 miles. And the winner of that race is, on his or her bike for 22 hours a day for 9 straight days.
Ooh. Wow.
It's not good for you. I wouldn't recommend it. It's sleep deprivation is a big part of it. But I've got a lot of things that I want to still accomplish. And I make jokes all the time. Like, I've got these new sponsors. I can say one that I want. We haven't even talked to them yet, but like somebody said, "Hey, I have a contact at Lazy Boy." I'm like, I love that idea. Like, I need to
Oh,
have Lazy
that's
Boy
funny.
as my partner. And AARP. Like, I've
Oh,
never
yeah,
talked
yeah,
to
yeah.
them either, but I'm like,
They're
come on,
huge.
man.
Yeah,
This
why
is
not? What are like some of the profound things you want to leave listeners with that can really kind of change their life, but things that have been hard earned in your life that you've now looking back come to recognize that perhaps they should think about and ponder over?
Yeah, man, hard-won wisdom. I think adaptability is the key to life. I really do. And what I love to say is that, what happens to us isn't nearly as important as what we do about it. I
Right.
mean, in our lives, we all are going to be hit out of the blue with disease, with loss of loved ones, with job changes or business change. Like, all those things are going to happen. So the more often I go do hard things on purpose, the more prepared I am to kind of deal with things that come out of the blue. So I think not focusing on outcomes and focusing on today. The only miles you can run are the ones that are right in front of you. I don't care who you are. That's a metaphor or a literal
I
thing.
think you've been sober for over 30 years. For people that are struggling with addictions of it could be food or pornography or whatever addiction, what's your kind of advice to them or things you've learned about that one?
Man, Charlie, it's a beautiful question, and it's a great way to finish up. I know where your heart of service is, so you'll appreciate this. It's this simple idea that to keep it, you have to give it away. Whatever your gift is, if you can find a way to be, I don't care what you're struggling with, the way out of struggle is to be of service to other people who are struggling, maybe with the same thing, but maybe with something else. If we put ourselves in a position to be of service to other people, suddenly we get out of our own stuff and mired in that stuff. And I have never, ever seen a situation where if I choose to be of service to somebody else, that it doesn't benefit me the most.
And in prison, you said that you were probably of service to 50 people who got healthy by just following you and you
Yeah.
inspired them. And that had to give you some psychic energy that, hey, at least I'm doing something for the
I,
benefit of
and
humanity in
and I
prison.
appreciated helping them, Charlie, but you know what the reality
They were
is?
helping you.
I
Yeah.
did it for me. I mean,
Right.
I understood that if this was my way to get through this terrible ordeal in my life, and to have appreciation and love. I mean, the hardest part about prison, I mean, we're way past that now, but was the lack of being able to just like, hug my kids. I mean, it was really that simple. And what I thought all the time was for those guys who were in there for 10 years or 20 years or crazy long sentences, they go that long in their life without like a really loving hug from a family member. And just think about your own life in terms of having no meaningful, like loving physical contact. I don't mean sex, I mean
Right.
like
Sure.
contact with somebody who cares about you. Like, that is the most damaging part about that situation. And I was only there for a year and a half.
Well, this is unbelievable. I was so excited when I woke up today that you and I were going to be talking, and I am always so inspired when we hang out. And I look forward to seeing you in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah. Speaking of hugs, I can't wait to give you one. And
Likewise, brother.
it's been a minute, so it'll be great seeing you and having some fun together. Best conversation I've had in a long time. Thanks for letting me just like run my mouth.
No, you were great. Thank you for coming and your time.
My
So thank
pleasure.
you very much.
Thank you, my friend.